Next on AM 1480 WLEA, the Newsmaker Show. Here's Brian O'Neill.
And today we're doing a Congressman Tom Reed, a weekly press call. Reed starts out talking about legislation he's working on to help victims of identity theft.
This week, guys, I wanted to highlight some work we're doing in the Social Security space. As you all know, I'm the Republican leader on Social Security across the country in the House of Representatives, and working in a bipartisan way with John Larson, we have agreed to drop the bill called the Improving Social Security Service to Victims of Identity Theft Act. This bill is, as I said, a bipartisan bill. Working with groups such as AARP, Social Security Works, Association of Mature American Citizens, a broad, diverse coalition of stakeholders to essentially set in Social Security Administration's policies that when someone is identified having suffered their identity being stolen, that those victims will have a single point of contact with the Social Security Administration. What that means is essentially gone will be the days where when you're the subject of identity theft, when you contact Social Security, you may be dealing with multiple points of contact, multiple people over a period of time, having to go through your story time and time again. Rather, what we are looking for is to have Social Security Administration assign one point of contact in the Social Security system for those individuals that are dealing with the very serious crime of identity theft. Having talked to so many victims of this theft of your identity, the anxiety, the impact, the damage that is caused to those victims is significant. People are rightfully scared as to the extent of the identity theft, and making sure that because most of the identity theft deals with issues such as your Social Security number being corrupted, access points where your Social Security number is disclosed to these thieves and utilized in order to get credit, to steal from you, not even knowing that it is occurring. I hope this bill that we have come to an agreement on will make it easier for those victims to have some security in knowing that when they contact the Social Security Administration, they will have one individual that is assigned to their case, knows their case, and doesn't have this being lost in a bureaucracy effect that these victims really do not need to suffer and compound their status as a victim. So as we deal with the ever-growing impact of identity theft, this Improving Social Security Service to Victims of Identity Theft Act, to me, is a common sense proposal that will go a long way to stand with the victims of this serious crime, and that's identity theft in America. So that being presented, we'll open it up to questions, Will.
First question came from Jerry Zaremski of the Buffalo News.
Hey, Tom. How you doing?
Doing well, Jerry. Let me turn you up here a little bit. Give me 2 seconds.
Oh, sure.
Okay, good. Go ahead. I hear you a lot better.
Okay, great. I just wanted to ask you a question about everything that's going on in New York 27. It looks like there may be a Republican primary there this summer, and I was wondering if you had any thoughts about that and if any of the potential candidates had reached out to you for potential support.
I watched this just like everyone else. Saw that over the weekend in the special election, Chris Jacobs was identified as the chairman's selection for the Republican ticket for that special election. And knowing Chris and working with Chris, I think he brings to the table tremendous amounts of credentials that are attractive to me. He is battle-tested. He has been on the campaign trail in regards to having run for that state Senate seat up in that area. And we'll do what we can to help Chris through this process to make sure that special election goes the way that it should go, in my opinion, and that's to remain in Republican hands and get a voice in that seat as soon as possible for the residents of the 27th Congressional District. I am aware that obviously democracy will take place, it appears, in regards to the upcoming general election in November. And to me, relying on the collective wisdom of the people is, to me, the preferred course, and we'll just see how this primary unfolds going forward. But I think Chris is going to demonstrate to those folks that he's a very capable candidate, capable individual, and we support his election in that special election to come join us and fight for the folks of the 27th Congressional District.
Okay, given the kind things you're saying about Chris Jacobs here, can that be read as an endorsement beyond the special election and for a primary, or no?
Well, I'm going to let that process take its course, and I'm going to stay out of that election process, as that's a neighboring district. But I will just tell you, I stand with Chris Jacobs and this special election, and I think he's going to demonstrate to the people that he is going to be the candidate that will represent them long term there.
Okay. Do you know Jeff Freeland at all, and has he approached you?
So I am familiar with Jeff Freeland, knowing his working over at the White House and our relationship with the White House. And, I've met with a few of the other candidates that are there. Having come across Stefan, Rob, and Beth at various functions and various events. And the best thing I could offer is that when people are willing to step forward and engage in the democratic process, that's when America is at its best. And so we encourage that continuation of participation.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you so much.
Yep, thank you.
It's the Congressman Tom Reed weekly press call here on the Newsmaker show. The next question comes from Rick Miller of the Olean Times-Herald.
Say, if you were a senator and you were asked to vote on whether to hear from John Bolton in the impeachment trial, how would you vote?
Well, I don't know if that's a demotion or a raise, being promoted to Senate. So that's not appropriate for me to respond to, Rick, to be perfectly honest with you. The senators are going to have all the information before them to make that decision. What I can control is what my record is on impeachment in the House of Representatives, and I am opposed to this impeachment. And at the end of the trial, I think the Senate is going to come down with that same conclusion, and that the president should not be removed from office, and we should respect the electoral will of the American people, not only in 2016, but here shortly around the corner, a few months in 2020.
It just seems though that with new information coming out, and after everyone's complained that there's no witnesses or anything, and according to the New York Times anyway, in the Bolton book, he's basically saying the same thing that the Democrats had on the impeachment charges.
Well, but I think the whole record is very clear. I mean, in regards to the phone call and the issues that are there, and if John Bolton was so important to the impeachment case, as you remember when we were going through the House controlled who they would call, the witnesses they would call, the investigation they would conduct, and whether they would go through the process of subpoenaing people like John Bolton. John Bolton said, if the House wanted to talk to him, he'd defer to the courts, but of course he would honor a lawful directive of the House. So, this again reiterates to me why playing politics with impeachment, like has been done in this case, is dangerous long term to the country, and it's dangerous right now in the sense of you're turning this over to potentially a political circus, and the world is watching, the American people are watching. And one of the things that I heard when I was home this week was not an awful lot about impeachment, but a lot more about what are you going to do to impact my life when it comes to things like prescription drug prices, the issue of insulin, the issue of healthcare, and the issue of energy.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks, Rick.
Newsmaker show, Congressman Tom Reed's weekly press call. And the next question comes from WDOE, that's in the Dunkirk area.
Yes, good afternoon, Tom. It's Greg Larson. How you doing?
I'm doing well, Greg. Thanks for tuning in this week.
Oh, no problem. Since Rick decided to go along with the question about John Bolton, I'm going to turn more to something local. Later tonight, the winner of the Small Business Revolution will be announced at about 8 o'clock. And, of course, the village of Fredonia is one of the 5 towns in the running. And I'm just wondering, are you going to be paying attention to tonight's announcement of the winner?
We are, and we have been paying attention to this. And we were glad to use our pulpit to help try to identify and secure additional votes for Fredonia. And just kudos to the entire community of Fredonia for stepping forward and and engaging in this process. Win, lose, or draw, when you can get national attention on a great community like Fredonia, that's a positive thing. And I think what they're doing there should be applauded, and we continue to stand with them through this process. And I just hope we have a great outcome this evening where we can improve the lives of people living in the village of Fredonia by participating in this great contest.
And how much of a rollover effect do you anticipate it'll have across the region if Fredonia is named the winner for Season 5?
I think it will be significant, and it will highlight us on the national stage, and it will allow some energy to be brought into the room that whenever you can unite the energy in a positive way, it is amazing what we can accomplish. So kudos to Fredonia for what has been done. But we're anticipating hopefully a great result this evening, and we'll come together as an area to maximize the investment that would represent.
Okay, thanks, Tom.
Going to take a quick break here on the Newsmaker show, then we'll check the forecast. We'll be right back with Congressman Tom Reed's Media Call.
It's the Start Something new sales event at Maple City Dodge. New year, new amazing pricing. 2019 Ram 1500 Crew with new body style, only $35,559. 2019 Crew Cab Bighorn, classic body style, starting at $36,719. These trucks are loaded. Prices while supplies last and include rebates, including first responder rebate, lease loyalty, bonus coupon, and old Larry Gardner says there are great specials on everything in stock. Maple City Dodge Hornell. Get the real deal every time.
Checking in now with meteorologist Rob Carolyn. Rob, kind of cold out there overnight.
Yes, a little on the chilly side, Brian, though not as cold as it is up towards the Adirondacks. Saranac Lake currently checking in at 13 below, but they're crystal clear. While across the southern tier, Brian, I mentioned it earlier, we've got a little bit of cloudiness. We're kind of right on the edge. You go west of us out towards Jamestown, Dunkirk, it's completely clear. But generally from Elmira to Dansville and east, we've got some cloudiness. And that cloudiness ends in the Binghamton area, so it's just very localized right on the edge of it. And I think we end up kind of partly sunny today. Temperatures are going to be 35 to 40. Sunrise was at 7:26. It'll set tonight at 5:21. Tonight we'll have lots of clouds. We're going to be 20 to 25. We're back under the cloudiness throughout the day tomorrow. Highs 35 to 40. Weather system, a very weak one, is going to produce a snow shower or flurry late tomorrow night, 25 to 30. Clouds on Saturday. Could see a flurry or a snow shower 40. Maybe a flurry or snow shower to Sunday. And then it looks like milder weather starts to flood into the region on Monday ahead of a storm that may bring us some rain showers Tuesday, Brian.
It's the Congressman Tom Reed Weekly Media Call. Getting back to it with a question from Cecilia Clark. She's with WSKG Binghamton.
I have two things to ask you about today. The first one is the Ithaca Post Office. The downtown Ithaca Post Office seems to be slated, or there's talk that it might be closing. The mayor sent a letter to Senator Schumer. I wonder if he said that he's also sent a letter to other congressional legislators. So I wonder if you've gotten a letter from the mayor, if you'd be willing to work with Senator Schumer to try to keep the post office in downtown Ithaca opened.
Yeah. So do appreciate working on these issues like we have in other communities, and we'll work with the mayor in regards to the Ithaca post office, and look forward to these are issues that we could hopefully find common ground on, and I am confident that making sure that the post office remains in downtown Ithaca is something we can come together and fight for. The post office, one of the things I wanted to put on people's radar coming down the pipeline here is our bill to deal with the post office superfunding requirements for its pension is coming to the floor here because of the work we've done in the Problem Solvers Caucus and getting it on the consensus calendar. And that's going to bode well, getting that through the House to hopefully the finish line. So that we can put the post office in a much more stable position so that these closures don't have to be wrestled with across the country. And so hopefully we can get a success there for the post office from a operational impact. And that will allow us to go back to the post office to say these closures, such as the one you're proposing in the city of Ithaca, should be reconsidered, tabled, and keep that post office there.
Thank you. And I also have a question that relates to last. You told us you gave us some information about the green light law and the impact that it's having in DC. You said that that you all were hearing that DHS, TSA, and others might not accept any New York State driver's licenses as a valid ID for federal purposes for travel. In particular, you talked about. I spoke. I wonder what the status of that is this week. You said you were working on arranging a meeting with the acting head of DHS. But I'd like to just get a general update on where that is, if it's more than rumor. And then so go ahead and answer that first, but I also want to get your response to something that someone told me.
Okay. Well, it's still in the works. We are, obviously this discussion is something we have picked up on, and so hopefully we're going to nip it in the bud sooner rather than later. And so we're going to continue to keep an eye on the folks at Homeland Security and making sure that this discussion results in a positive outcome. So still in the works as we speak. Don't have a direct update as to whether or not they've changed course because, this has been something we're picking up kind of in the chatter box of Washington, D.C. And because it's such a significant obstacle and burden on New York residents, it is something I am keeping my eyes and ears open to very acutely. And so stay tuned. Hopefully it becomes a non-issue. But I will tell you, the Homeland Security officers are taking, or the representatives are taking, the security risk that the green light law represents very seriously as a vector that could be exploited. And so that is why the ID concern is being raised.
So you also mentioned, so what I was trying to get clear about what the law does and doesn't allow local law enforcement to do. And in the process of doing that, I spoke with Rich as a party, who's a senior advisor to Governor Cuomo. So I'd like to get your reaction to what he told me. These are his words. He said, "This is just another sad lie from Congressman Do Nothing looking for a cheap political hit. Facts be damned." He said, "Real ID standards long predate the green light law. Non-real ID licenses are clearly marked, and Reed should knock it off with the fear-mongering." So troublesome rhetoric from a governor spokesperson that would engage in such childish and kindergarten type of language and attacks. The bottom line is the governor's office doesn't recognize that this poses a security risk at the federal level because these illegal immigrants are not being vetted. These will have access to New York State IDs, and we've looked at, if you look at the photos as we released with I believe we did last week with our release, those IDs are very similar. There are some distinguishing characteristics on the ID, but I will tell you, it is not as if they are completely different IDs at their base format than the New York State driver's license. And so this risk is real. It is something I take very seriously. And if the governor wants to just haphazardly dismiss security threats to New York residents' security, that's his prerogative. But I will tell you, I take protecting New York State residents' security very seriously, and we will do what we have to at the federal level to make sure that it is protected. Okay, and I just want to be clear, get clear about where you see or where you're hearing them say security risk is. Is it specifically because the ID, there's a difference between what's called the standard ID that says on it not for federal use, and that's the main distinguisher from the real ID, which is the new kind of ID that can be used for travel and for federal purposes?
Well,
is that the difference? Yeah.
Just so we're clear, I mean, you're talking about a font that is very small, where this distinction of these IDs from the New York State driver's license are indicated. And if you're expecting that nominal change in the ID is enough to protect the security interests of New York residents or other residents of other states because somehow a TSA officer or someone who's doing a check at some type of security clearance entranceway, that they're going to catch that 100%. We should not be making their lives more difficult to mitigate risk to our security as citizens. We should be doing what we can to enhance protection of our security. And so, just because it has a minor small font type of distinguishing characteristic on the ID, that is very dangerous, and it comes with risks that we're going to recognize, and that we're going to make sure people understand that my office is not going to just stand quietly by and say that this is okay.
Okay, thanks. I have two more questions if we have time for them.
Okay, let's see. I just got called for votes. That was the bells going off, so I'm always trying to squeeze things in here. It seems like the days get shorter and shorter. So thanks. All right, anybody else here, Will?
Tom Puckett.
Tom Puckett's with WBEN Buffalo.
Hi, Congressman. I know I heard your comments earlier with regards to Ambassador Bolton, whether there should be witnesses. The Senate Trump defense team just wrapped up in the Senate, and they'll resume tomorrow. Your thoughts on what you've heard from the Senate defense team as far as the fight to not have President Trump removed?
Yeah, so I think this is consistent with the arguments and the position that I came down with as we were going through the process in the House. Based on what was presented, based on the arguments for impeachment and the removal of a president, I just do not see that smoking gun evidence of an impeachable offense that warrants the removal of a duly elected president of the United States. And history should be our guide here. And, I think at the end of the day, the senators are going to conclude, just as they did with President Clinton, just as they did before, that impeachment is not warranted here. And the cure, the remedy that I think they're going to offer to the nation is that the American people have an opportunity to speak, and they will be speaking here in a very short 10 to 11-month window.
Very quickly, Congressman, do you believe that what Bolton had to say was published in the manuscript is not the smoking gun?
I don't even know if that is 100% of an accurate representation of the entire manuscript, or if it's taken out of context. I mean, that's why this all should have been vetted in the House of Representatives. They should have done their job there. They should have had these questions answered before they just went down this path. And we'll let the senators deal with where they want to take it in regards to that question of witnesses. But at the end of the day, we all we can deal with is what we have before us, and what I have before me shows me, in my opinion, that the President of the United States should not be removed from office, that we should defer to the American people.
Very good. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
Jamestown Post-Journal. Dennis?
Hey, Tom. It's Dennis from the Post-Journal.
Hey, Dennis.
I was just hoping to what was the technical name again on the Social Security bill?
Yeah, it's the Improving Social Security Service to Victims of Identity Theft Act. Just rolls right off your tongue there, Dennis. Thank you. But it clearly articulates exactly what we're trying to accomplish here. Identity theft is serious. When folks are dealing with that situation, we want to make sure that the government, especially the Social Security Administration that deals with a lot of these cases, because Social Security numbers are involved, that people have the comfort in knowing that their case is assigned to one individual.
Getting close to wrapping things up here with the Congressman Tom Reed media press call. He did have a question from Terry Frank, the Jamestown radio reporter.
I did have one question. I know that you're being called for a vote, but before we came on with you for the Congressional Weekly Call here, the Congressional Budget Office reported just moments ago about the U.S. budget deficit likely to burst through the symbolic $1 trillion barrier this year, despite a healthy economy. And they're also projecting out over 10 years, I believe, to 2030, $31.4 trillion deficit. I wanted to get your reaction to it. How alarmed are you by these numbers?
The reason I ran for Congress was this national debt crisis, and I am still alarmed by it. I am still out on the mountaintop talking about these issues when they come up, when I can, and it just reminds me again, hearing a report such as that, that this debt is going to eventually come home to roost, and already is, and it is something we in Congress should make a priority of. It is something where, to a degree, I disagree with the administration in regards to the seriousness of these deficits and this debt. I see it as a much more immediate crisis than maybe the administration does. So it's a point of distinction between me and the administration. And this debt is going to be solved in my humble opinion, by getting our fiscal house in order, which is driven on the spending side of the ledger, and revenues continue to come in. The economy is doing well at levels that we haven't seen before, and so it's a question of getting the spending under control.
Very good. Thank you, Tom.
Yeah, thanks, Terry.
All right, that wraps it up.
All right, thanks, guys. We will catch up next week. I got to go vote. Thanks.
So that's that for the Congressman Tom Reed, a weekly press call here on the Newsmaker Show on AM 1480 WLEA Hornell. Thanks for listening.